Today I'm going to expose an enormous problem with the theory of evolution, the proposed origin of higher intelligence. If you examine any proposal of man's development from lower primates, you'll see an imaginary line of descent such as this, with an earlier species gradually developing upright posture and an increasingly larger skull. Chimpanzees and humans do have similar gross anatomy, but chimpanzees are closer to mice than to humans as far as intelligence is concerned. To justify evolution, sometimes the similarities between ape and human intelligence are overstated. For example, it's claimed that chimpanzees are so intelligent that they can use simple tools, such as using a stick to dig termites out of a log. However, other animals are also relatively intelligent. Some birds can do the same thing, and even some fish have been known to use simple tools. On the other hand, human intelligence is far, far superior to an ape or any other animal. Humans have the ability to learn complex languages, compose symphonies, understand quantum physics, develop a sense of humor, and contemplate their origins. No other species can come close to this. Nevertheless, gross anatomy and similarities in DNA are the primary focus given for defending human evolution. But when it comes to explaining the mechanism of how higher intelligence can be acquired through mutations, this is invariably downplayed or ignored. And the reason for this is because it's impossible to explain. There are two fundamental problems in explaining the evolution of human intelligence. First, the origin of many aspects of human intelligence can't be ascribed to Darwinian mechanisms. If you take a young child from a Stone Age tribe in New Guinea, you can raise him in a Western country and he'll be just as intelligent as any other human. He can understand principles of astrophysics, learn several languages, become an accomplished musician, and demonstrate all other higher intellectual faculties that are seen in civilized societies. There is no evolutionary explanation how these traits could have been selected for in a primitive hunting-gathering environment. A complex brain is very expensive from a standpoint of energy consumption. It utilizes about 20% of the calories and oxygen available for the entire body. So if a species is struggling to survive, the metabolic demands of a very complex brain would be a severe disadvantage and would prohibit such changes from being preserved in the population. This contradicts Darwinism because it appears that the higher faculties of human intelligence were created for a future advantage and at a sacrifice to survival. A much bigger problem in the evolution of the brain is its complexity. If evolution creates complexity, it has to do so by proportionally increasing the complexity of the genetic code. Typically, all that is stated are things like, human ancestors began to have larger brains as their nutrition improved, which provided a survival advantage. Simple enlargement of the brain doesn't create higher intelligence. Many animals have larger brains than humans. So given the complexity of the brain, how could mutations have created higher intelligence? The answer is it's impossible, and I'm going to show you some simple numbers that'll prove this. But before showing you the numbers, I need to briefly explain what makes a human so much smarter than any animal. It's not just the size of the brain. Except for differences in size, the brain of a human and a chimpanzee looks similar on gross inspection, and even on a microscopic evaluation. If you look at the individual cell types in the brains of both humans and chimpanzees, the cells themselves are identical. So just adding more brain tissue isn't going to make an animal more intelligent. Now, it's controversial how to measure intelligence by evaluating brain anatomy. But it is known that humans are vastly more intelligent than any animal, and the only plausible explanation for this from a materialistic standpoint is that human brains have far more complex circuitry. Human brains have about 3 times as many neurons as any ape, and each neuron communicates with about 10,000 other neurons through connections known as synapses. This network is far more complex in a human than any lower animal. Now for some numbers. A human brain has about 660 trillion more synapses than the brain of a chimpanzee. Human evolution allegedly occurred over 7 to 8 million years, within an estimated population of 10,000. This means that during the entire time period, about 2 billion human ancestors would have been born. If evolution created 660 trillion new synapses in the brain, then this means that an average of 330,000 new synapses would have occurred in each offspring during the entire time period. This makes the ridiculous assumption that, on average, every birth resulted not just in an increased number of neurons and synapses. It presupposes that every new element of circuitry was functionally integrated with the rest of the brain. Now, I've thrown every advantage on the side of evolution. I haven't even factored in the fact that every favorable mutation has only a 1 in 500 chance of becoming fixed in the population. If you disagree with these numbers, go ahead and increase the population sizes and mutation rates. Given the randomness of mutations, the likelihood of a single functional mutation resulting in one additional neuron and its associated functionally integrated synapses during the entire proposed evolutionary time period is so small that it can be rounded off to 0. Now, you might be told that higher intelligence might have come from chromosomal inversions or frame shift mutations or unknown epigenetic factors. I hope you won't fall for this. It doesn't matter what source of changes you invoke. A random mistake in reproduction of any kind cannot result in an average of 330,000 new functionally integrated synapses at birth. It's never been observed to occur, and it's mathematically impossible. Now, the only way you can possibly counter these numbers is to imagine that isolated mutations occurred, resulting in millions of new neurons and functionally integrated synapses in just a few steps by chance. This is no different than imagining that a monkey could create a novel through random keystrokes. Don't be fooled by millions of years. Remember, we're talking about a total of 2 billion individuals in the entire history of the origin of human intelligence. That's about the total number of human births in the past 25 years. Some evolutionary biologists are getting so desperate that they're proposing that human ancestors 200,000 years ago started eating psychedelic mushrooms, and this caused rapid expansion of the mind. Of course, there's no evidence that eating mushrooms can cause increased intelligence, and even if it could, traits acquired in life can't be passed to offspring. Now, this proposal was published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, and believe it or not, this is currently the best they can come up with to justify the origin of human intelligence. Take a look at some excerpts from a video with over 8 million views. This is what is typically presented as an explanation for human intelligence.
The only way to survive is to outthink them. The smarter we get, the longer we live. Natural selection promotes the mutations that improve our brain power, like weaker jaw muscles. Released from the muscle's vice-like grip, the brain is free to grow. It doubles in size. Fire. It sparks an idea that will make our ancestors human. And cooked meat is easier to chew. The powerful molars used to chew tough raw food retreat back into the gums, where they'll stay. With less energy spent on chewing, our ancestors have energy to spare. The brain increases to the size of a softball, 50% larger than before the invention of cooking. Erectus is the cleverest, most cooperative ancestor to date. But with several adult males in an extended family, rivalries are inevitable. Communicate and will live longer. Natural selection kicks in. Our tongue changes shape and moves down our throat, carrying the larynx with it, allowing us to form different shapes in our mouths, making different sounds, and ultimately, words.
Now, I can assure you, this presentation is not dumbed down for the average person to understand. This ridiculous caricature of biology is the cutting edge of what is known. This is how the origin of the most complex assembly of matter in the known universe is explained. If you ask any evolutionary biologist to explain how human intelligence evolved, you'll get nothing of substance beyond what you've just seen. If you do a Google search on what's out there on the origin of human intelligence, you'll see articles that appear scientific. They are all founded on speculation within a paradigm of evolution. And the research that's being conducted consists of things like comparing brain size and neuron density of humans and chimpanzees, or identifying genes that would be needed to be modified to result in brain evolution, or how environmental factors created selective pressures for higher intelligence. There is nothing in the literature I've seen that attempts to document the mechanism of how the integrated circuitry of the brain could have been created through mutations. No one is funding any of this type of research because no one has any idea where to start. No one is feeding mushrooms to rats to see if this results in higher intelligence because no one believes that such an experiment will be successful. Most of the research funds into human evolution are directed to finding more and more fragmented skull fossils of supposed pre-human ancestors. It's hoped that this will convince skeptics that human intelligence evolved, and that you'll give up looking for a plausible explanation as to how it could have evolved. So when you look at a fragmented supposed pre-human fossil such as this, ask yourself, am I going to accept the subjective opinion of someone who's pre-committed to atheistic evolution, or will I rely on simple mathematics and common sense? Again, I've presented very simple math. Bear in mind that no mutation has ever been observed in any species that resulted in higher intelligence. In fact, no one has proposed how such a change could be accomplished, even through genetic engineering. The modern theory of evolution says that if you take a chimpanzee and add 8 million years, you can end up with an intelligent human. Think of what's being claimed. Thank you for tuning in. I'll have many more presentations in the future, so I hope you'll subscribe to my channel.